sang this song to me. There was a message in its melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. He said, tomorrow is another day, living is the only way tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be.
Good evening, and thank you all for joining me for this episode of A Sip of Inspiration. As usual, I try to bring to us programming that will help inspire us, inform us, and help us to change our lives so that we can live the lives that we were created to live. I'm known as the Empowerment Doctor. Usually people call me the straight no chaser motivator because I give it to you straight because I feel like you don't have a whole lot of time to waste. Joining me for tonight's segment is Mike Veny, and he is a mental health speaker. He's actually a corporate wellness specialist, and he is my mental health superhero. I want to encourage you all before he comes on to go out and get his book. He has a book that talks about being a mental health superhero. So I bought it on Kindle, and it's wonderful. Okay, so I don't endorse a lot of books, but I really love this one. So thank you, Mike, for joining me, and just sort of introduce yourself to the audience so that they can get familiar with you and fall in love with you the way I have.
Well, thank you. That was a heck of an introduction there. Stephanie, it's great to be on your show, and hello to your viewers and listeners out there. My name is Mike Veny, and I'm all about mental health and mental wellness, and I have really made it my mission in life to really focus on this issue because it has been a challenge for me for most of my life. And a lot of times when people think of mental health challenges, they think that's not a good thing. That's something that we don't want to talk about. That's something we want to avoid. And it really made it hard for me for many years to even admit to myself that I struggled with these challenges. As we'll talk about in a bit, as a child, I was hospitalized in a mental hospital 3 times. I was expelled from 3 schools for behavior problems. I attempted to die by suicide at age 10. So I know what it means to struggle. And each and every day, I battle depression, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder. Case in point, this morning, it was very difficult for me to get out of bed. And it's not because I'm lazy. I am a hard worker. I'm on top of my stuff, but I struggle with depression where it actually affects me physically. And so I have to really work extra hard to keep it together just so I could show up in the world and give life my best.
Well, thank you for showing up for us and giving us your best tonight. So I have a series of questions, as the audience always knows. So I have a lot of questions, and I want to encourage everyone to use that comment box. Put your questions in that comment box, and I promise you we will work them into the show. And as I would like to remind those of you listening, if you don't have any questions, you can ask questions for your friends and your church members and your coworkers. Okay, we'll take those questions too. So first question I have is how how have your mental health challenges impacted your life?
Well, they have made it difficult for me to navigate relationships with people, especially growing up. Like I said, when you are constantly battling anger issues and sadness, it just makes it hard to connect. So, yeah, I had people that kind of knew me, but I had a difficult time making friends, and it made it very difficult in my young adult life and relationships and even with work. I started my career as a drummer, and one of the challenges that I would find is that my anxiety would really kick in and it would actually affect my playing. And I wonder, if you're the band leader, what if you find out that something's off with me? You might, fire me or something like that. And so for me, it's made it difficult to just do what I consider basic things in life, and even like I said, getting up in the morning. When people say they can't get out of bed, a lot of times people think that's lazy. And there are some people that are just lazy and don't get out of bed. But a lot of times it could be something else like depression. And that's a simple thing that I think I should be able to do. I want to get out of bed, but sometimes I really can't. So that's how it's affected me for 41 years.
Wow. I'm glad you made the decisions to join us today. So, and knowing the struggle, I feel really blessed and special to have you here.
Thank you.
Um, how do people respond to you knowing that you live with mental health challenges?
That's a great question. In one sense, when I was younger, there was a negative response to it. People wanted to keep their distance. And one of the lessons that I learned, and this is really critical for anyone who's listening, watching, who might be struggling or knows someone who's struggling, when I started to practice self-care and really work on myself, for some oddball reason, I started to feel better about myself. And as I felt better about myself, it kind of didn't matter what other people thought of me. So I don't even notice if someone has a negative response to knowing that I have mental health challenges now. It's just a part of me. And, we talk about it like we talk about sports.
Oh, what do you believe to be the most common mental and emotional problems African American men and African American children face?
Oh,
Because
such
that's
a great
something we
question.
never talk about in the African American community.
Yes, and it's slowly gaining some steam. There's several different organizations out there, and Taraji P. Henson and other people that are starting to talk about it a little bit more. There's an article on my website called "Depression versus the Strong Black Man," and I one of the things that I did when I did this article, I actually. I've heard the term strong black man my whole life. And during the time that I wrote this several years ago, I actually said, let me Google this term, see what it actually means. I couldn't find a definition for the term. So here is a term that we all throw around, but there was no actual definition for it. And I realized that for a black man, we are a culture of honor. We don't like to be disrespected, and even in let's say you and I are walking down the street together and someone who's Caucasian calls us a racial slur. You and I are going to be angry at some level. I think we're not going to try to fight them. I'm going to say that for me, maybe. I don't know, but either way, either at the end of the day, we're going to feel disrespected. And that's because we are in a culture of honor. And a lot of times as people of color, we feel like by admitting that we're struggling with something, we're disrespecting ourselves. And that's the problem right there. And so what I'm learning is that, to answer your question, one of the most popular mental health challenges is depression. And here's the thing that people don't realize about depression: for a lot of men who quote unquote show anger issues, it's actually depression in disguise.
Wow. What about children? Is practically the same thing happening with children too?
Yeah, it seems to be depression and anxiety. And truth be told, depression and anxiety is, amongst all different ethnic groups, the two most popular mental health challenges that people have. And, if you think about it, depression, I always like to say, like, there's the chemical reason sometimes. So for some people, these mental health challenges come because we've got a chemical imbalance in our brain or in our body somewhere that's contributing to it. For some, it's the trauma they've experienced. Even experiencing what we have seen over the past year in terms of social injustice issues and racism, that can really affect our mental health, and people don't understand that. So that's what affects a lot of kids right now. And also, one other thing that we can talk about hopefully at some point is social media. Being constantly stuck on mobile devices. We're tribal people by nature. We need to interact and be social. And even what we're doing right now, we're interacting, but it's not the same as if we were in person. So these are things that are contributing, especially in the African American community, to mental health challenges.
So let's talk about social media. That's what you okay.
Uh-oh. Yes, follow me. That's what let's talk about it. Follow me.
About social media. So, and I swear, you know, every 50% of your friends experts too on everything in social media. So how does in my mind, social media does allow you to be in the group of people in your tribe, but to me, it seems to at some point narrow your thinking and beliefs because you're not exposed to any contrary opinions.
Well,
So how does that how does that affect your mental health?
well, so many ways to answer this question here. Let me first say this. After this recording is done, I'm gonna, shut off my computer, and I'm probably going to pick up this device right here and check it. That simple behavior is a habit that we don't even realize that we have. The moment I get into the car after I went grocery shopping, I'm just going to quickly check this. So part of the problem is not even what we're just looking at on social media, but we're addicted to mobile devices. One thing I want to bring up is castles. I love talking about castles. Back in the day, medieval times, they were these giant brick buildings, and if I went to the castle, somebody would say, "Who goes there?" I'd say, "Mike Veny, the mental health guy," and hopefully they let me in. They let the drawbridge down. But the thing is, they were really specific about who they let in the castle, let that drawbridge down for. And when it comes to social media, we seem to just let our drawbridge down for whatever is just in front of our eyes. So that's part of the problem with mobile devices and social media, something we default to. Also, when it comes to, as you said, the groups and ideas we're exposed to, we generally look at things that we like to look at and we end up angry at other things. And for those of you that are out there that are telling me that you're constantly stressed out by what you see on social media, I want to share a secret. There's a thing called unfollow and unfriend on every single social media site. So you don't have to see things you don't want to see. But at the same time, I think it's very important, as you were asking, to expose yourself to different perspectives.
Yes, I think different perspectives are important because I think if nothing else, they help you understand why you really believe what you believe. Because sometimes we just blindly believe stuff, and then someone comes in with an opinion that's contrary to it, but they did their homework and their facts too. And wouldn't you want to know what that is? If nothing else, it's great fodder for conversation.
It is. I was actually speaking in a southern state, and I did a presentation, and it was a big crowd. The presentation went well. We did Q&A. I love Q&A. So people that are out there, if you want to ask me questions, ask me whatever. And I love Q&A because it's like, I got to be on the spot and just whatever comes out, comes out. And I got asked this question. It was a teacher. He said, "Mike, I love everything you shared about mental health, but I have a problem in my classroom. I've got half the students are Trump supporters and the other half don't support Trump, and they're fighting with each other. What do I do?" And I thought about it. First of all, I said to myself, I gotta watch what I say. I can get myself in a lot of trouble right now. But you know what? I said to him something very important. And all of you that are listening, I really want you to listen to this. I said to him, "Sir, the problem isn't politics. The problem's a show called Jerry Springer that used to be on TV. And let me explain. If you never saw Jerry Springer, check it out. You could look it up on YouTube. People would just fight, throw chairs at each other, all this stuff. We bring that Jerry Springer style of connecting to conversations now. It's about right and wrong. And one way to really help yourself understand another's perspective when you hear a different one is to not make the other person wrong, but simply be curious and say, "Tell me more." And you can learn so much in doing that.
Yes, you can. And you're right, because they get to a point where they begin to question what they believe too. And then all of a sudden you've met, and that's where you can find the common ground and the peace. Let's talk about your book. Mike's book is entitled Transforming Stigma: How to Become a Mental Wellness Superhero. What can we expect when we read the book? The book. So I cheated. I read it already.
You can expect to become a superhero, but not a regular type of superhero, a mental wellness superhero. I actually was inspired to write this by one of my favorite superheroes that I think many people can connect with, the Incredible Hulk. And in one sense, in the 1970s, the show came out with Lou Ferrigno. And one of the reasons I believe that it was popular was because everyone understood the Hulk at some level. In one sense, he was a mild mannered physicist, Dr. David Banner, I think. And when he got triggered, he became a Hulk. And all of us have like a dark side in our lives that we don't talk about and sometimes can be very destructive. And so that's where I kind of start the book, that's all of us and that's okay. And I actually share about even other superheroes like Batman and his own stuff that he had going on. But ultimately, the book is half of it's my story, so you can understand who I am and why I'm writing it. The second half is simple and practical tools that you can start using right away to transform stigma in your life. That's simple.
And it's a great book. And thank you for writing it.
Thank you for reading
You're,
it. And
I loved it. I did. I really did. And I have my own favorite superheroes too. So it's like, this is cool. You're right. You can hide all that stuff in another hero. It's wonderful. I loved it. Your company's current mission is excuse me. Sorry, guys. I don't want to get this wrong. Your company's current mission is to support you in receiving the gift of emotional wellness through unique learning experiences designed to empower your personal and professional growth. Please share a few examples of how your company accomplishes this.
Oh, a few examples. This mission, and I want to say something about a company mission statement. A lot of times when people create one, they want to have one that sounds cool, that looks good on the wall, whatever. This mission statement does none of that for me, but it actually gets me emotional. Sometimes it even gets me angry because I know what it's like to struggle with my emotions every time I look at it. And so I have learned through my challenges that even our most difficult emotions are gifts. They are gifts if we learn how to receive them. And so through my work, I create YouTube videos, I create online courses, I deliver presentations around so many different things with mental health and emotional health to basically help people receive that wonderful gift.
So what were some of the gifts you discovered in your difficult emotion?
Okay, this one, when I share this gift, to all of you watching and listening, I want you to really like pay attention here to what I'm about to say. If you take nothing else, like just take this. There are three emotions that I learned about that wreak havoc for all of us. They are anger, grief, and fear. And we don't like to talk about those emotions at all. And if you think about it, fear, when you don't manage it, becomes anxiety. If you got anxiety, it's going to make it worse. Grief will become depression. If you got depression, it's going to make it worse. And anger, the worst one of all, hostility and violence. But the secret that I learned is that those three emotions are three of the best emotions you could ever have, and you need them for success in life. And I learned that if you learn to process your fear through working with a therapist, feeling your feelings, and your own self-care, fear actually becomes vision and courage. And grief, and for any of you who are experiencing grief right now, I know it's been a very difficult time. My heart goes out to you. And I know there's nothing I can say that can take away grief if you're going through that. Grief, when you sit with it and go through the grief you feel in your stomach, I mean, it's heavy. Grief will eventually become joy. And anger, the worst one of all, when you actually process it in a healthy way, becomes passion, decisiveness, and leadership. So you need those three emotions. It's just learning how to work with them. And most of us never learn that in our lives.
That's true. I have, in my own life, found anger to be incredibly powerful once you work through the anger. It's incredibly powerful. You don't change things until you're mad as hell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how you get stuff done, right?
How you get stuff done, right? Talk about decisiveness and leadership. Yes, I get it done. That's right. So you write about mental health myths versus facts. Share some of the common myths and facts.
One of the common myths is that people with mental health challenges are dangerous, violent.
Oh yeah, let's talk
And
about that because that's running rampant through
oh
social
yeah.
media threads.
Oh, it absolutely. I know we haven't had one in a while, but school shootings.
Hmm.
Um, one of the things that would happen in the media is that when a school shooting would happen, it's something very confusing. We don't understand why someone would do that. It would go right to, well, they have mental health issues.
Hmm.
And we do that because as humans, we don't like things we don't understand that are confusing and complex. We need to put it in a category. So sometimes we just default to that. But statistically, people with mental health challenges are more likely to have a violent crime committed against them than they are to actually commit a crime. Very, very safe. I can tell you in many ways, the mental hospital is one of the safest places I've ever been. It's like I've gone between like the mental hospital into the corporate world, and I'd rather be in the hospital.
Oh, we need to fix that corporate structure. Okay. So, what are some of the signs that a person may have that could possibly be indicators that they need to seek professional help? And when I say professional help, guys, I'm not talking about your friend on the phone. I'm talking about professional help. So, as I always say, don't ask your broke friend how to save money. Okay. Don't ask your unprofessional friend how to save your mental health. Okay. So, what are some of the signs?
Thank you for bringing this up, actually, because a lot of people say, "Oh, my friend Joe is my therapist." No, that's your friend. A therapist is a professional who is trained to help you. That's not a friend, a family member, or a significant other. And that's really important to have when you're working through mental health challenges, or even if you're not working through mental health challenges. One thing I say about therapy, and I want all of you to listen right now if you've ever considered therapy. Therapy doesn't, you don't go to therapy because you have problems and you're in a bad spot. That's people look at that as like, oh, I need therapy. I'm at the end. No, therapy you should be going to all the time because it's about self-discovery. You see, there's what you know about yourself, what you don't know about yourself, and what you don't know that you didn't even realize that you didn't even know about yourself. And that's where therapy can help you grow. So therapy, when you actually commit to it, will help you with growth. That being said, if someone is struggling and not going to therapy, there are signs to look for. One is their appearance. If they don't seem to be taking care of themselves physically, maybe the way you are used to them doing that, that's a sign that something is going on. If they're withdrawing from things in the day and age of Zoom, especially in the workplace, if someone is not keeping commitments like you know them to do, showing up on time, there might be something going on. So it's really important to never let anything little slide and say, okay, maybe that's nothing. Ask, are you okay? There's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you for the tips. What about children? Because parents are home now more with their kids and noticing behaviors that they didn't know existed. I guess they thought all this time the teachers were exaggerating, but I just, yeah.
What's going to happen when teachers ask for a raise now? This is going to be really interesting in the
Right.
future.
Oh no, there are a lot of parents out there says, "How much more money do you want? I will pay you," because they're realizing that it does take a lot to keep a kid engaged all day long. So what things would you, what behaviors would a child display at home that you should consider a therapist or some
What's
professional help?
I think therapists are good for children in general, whether they're displaying, behavior problems or not. But
Say
typically,
that
it's
again. Say that again. I
therapists are
think
good for children,
yes.
whether they're displaying behavior problems or not, because it's about self-discovery. Again, it's learning how to. Let me just say this, actually, for the record: learning to manage good emotions too. Some people don't know what to do with their excitement. Some people don't know what to do with their happiness all the time, so it's really important to just learn how to work through emotions in general. That being said, going back to kids, behavior problems, irritability, maybe a kid who's acting out who never used to act out. before. Maybe they are defiant at a whole different level or withdrawn. They're not doing anything. They don't want to see anybody. They don't want to do anything. And stuck on video games is a big one, or stuck on the mobile device. We notice that that's an escape activity, even for us adults. As I was saying before,
Mm.
I'm going to check this after I'm done. That's my escape activity. But it's important to get children help. But here's one of the best things parents can do. So if you're listening, you're a parent, and you've got a kid who's struggling right now, the best thing a parent can do is actually get therapy for themselves. I actually had to tell a group of middle school students something, Stephanie, that I never thought I would ever have to say. I said this back in December. I said to a group of middle school students in Wisconsin, I said, look, any other presentation, I would tell you about self-care and all this stuff. But every kid who is growing up needs a mentally healthy adult to be mentally healthy. And now most kids have parents who are struggling with their mental health. So I actually told a bunch of middle schoolers, you all need to be the example for your parents and get it together. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, like, but they understood because they know that their parents are struggling. So I think it's important as a family to get mental health help.
So you state that you can't see someone's feeling. You can't see what someone is feeling. You can't feel their feelings, and you really, when you observe their behaviors, you don't really know what you're observing. So when that happens, how would you approach that with someone you love? I mean, someone really close to you, because it's easy to tell a friend that, you know what, every day you get up, I see you on Zoom, you look like the washwoman, okay? Or, what's wrong with that hair? I mean, you can tell a friend that, you're sleeping in late, you're not eating. You can really tell a friend that. But how do you tell someone you love that?
Okay. First of all, I think when you are going to start the conversation with someone who might be struggling, that's a good thing. And there's no right way to do it. Let me just say that there's no
Okay.
right way to do it. And one thing I do want to say is the worst thing you can do is give them advice.
Okay.
And here's why. When it comes to mental health, okay, mental health challenges are confusing, complex, and frustrating. We can't just put them in a box. Nobody wakes up and goes, oh, I'm depressed today, I think I need to go see a doctor about it. Typically someone discovers it for you in your behavior and confronts you, and there's all this like figuring out in therapy. So it's really important to remember that when you're approaching someone who's struggling, they're going through their stuff. Advice is actually going to put a wall up between you and them. And also, as I learned from one of my therapists, when you start giving advice, it's never about the other person, it's about you. And so really important to not do that, but have awkward conversations. Let me explain. We don't like awkward in our society. We run from it.
Right.
But in order to be effective in a mental health conversation, you gotta make it awkward. And here's how you do it. You can ask the question, how can I support you? But after you ask the question, make sure there's uncomfortable silence.
Okay.
Yeah, like even thinking about it, right? It's like, whoa. But you know what? You're giving the person space so they can maybe start to think through things and ultimately trust you. But if you get uncomfortable and start like pushing, it's going to again put a wall. The other thing that you can say to someone is, help me understand. And that allows them to go into that confusion and complex stuff and try to articulate. But again, it's got to feel awkward. And a question that you can ask to someone at work who's struggling is, what kind of flexibility do you need from me right now? And that will give them the opportunity to hopefully tell you maybe what they need right now in that moment.
Those are great questions.
Thank you.
I love that. I'm writing that down. What
And
kind
by the way, my family uses them on me all the time.
You use them back though.
I'm struggling and they go, how can I support you? And I'm like, don't ask me that. Where'd you learn that?
No, they should say, shh. There's got to be an awkward silence. You're blowing it. Quiet. Just awkward silence. We're going to count. Those are really great ways of approaching it, and they're non-threatening, and they're really just an offer to help, to sit in it with someone until they can come to a decision as to what it is they need to do. Because they already know they're struggling. They just don't know how to articulate it. Those are great questions. So, the Mental Health Foundation states that what we eat and drink affects how we feel, think, and behave. And I really believe that. So, what changes in diets have you found effective?
You know, I'm going to say this again, kind of like I said, mental health challenges can be chemical, they can be from trauma, environment, or something else we don't understand. The treatment of mental health is multiple things. It's not just one thing. It's not just medication, not just self-care. A lot of it does include your diet, and diet does affect your mood and your focus. For me, one of the things that I've really been trying to work on is water, drinking my water, because I've found that when I'm dehydrated, sometimes dehydration shows the exact same symptoms as depression. So I'm up there thinking I'm depressed when I just didn't drink enough water. So it's really important that you start to look at what you're eating. The other thing that I've been doing is reducing gluten in my diet, wheat. For me, that's been helping me a lot, actually, with my anxiety and my depression.
I found out with water too, being dehydrated, you tend to think you're hungry, and you're not. You're really thirsty. You really need
Yep.
water. Yep. What about sugar? Sugar is just the worst thing ever happened. It seems lately, depending on whose article you read. So, what about sugar?
Sugar is one that, oh, first of all, let me say, like, I love sugar. And actually, I got to tell you something today. I can't believe I'm about to say this. I was working today, and I came upstairs, and there was a box that was arrived for me. And I'm like, what is this box? I open it up. It's all these baked goods. And it was a nice gift from Microsoft thanking me for working with them and delivering a mental health presentation. I thought it was the nicest gift. I was so happy. But oh, Stephanie, I wanted to eat everything in this. They were like Twinkies on steroids in this thing. And so the thing is,
Chocolate, okay?
I said to myself, I'm going to have to give these away to someone else as a gift. But the thing is, I have learned that for me, sugar is an addiction sometimes. And so I've really had to work very hard to reduce it. Even the little, like, I need a little bit of candy here and there, it actually messes with your blood sugar. And that could create all sorts of mood swings and stuff. So really making it a point to focus on that too.
Okay, I do know in some countries they have signs or warnings on chocolate where they talk about how it is the consumption of chocolate, because it has so much sugar and caffeine in it, actually has been linked to like ADHD and things like that. So we would do well to watch our sugar intake.
Yeah,
However,
can
go
I
ahead.
just add one thing to that, Stephanie?
Uh-huh.
Coffee. That's
Okay.
okay. I I I love me some coffee. And recently, for my own anxiety, I learned that 400 milligrams, which is about 4 cups, 8-ounce cups, is the maximum any of us should have in a given day. So I've had to really monitor that, especially because, like, I work at home and the coffee's right there brewing all the time. So it's really important, again, to become aware of all of your lifestyle decisions because they affect your health overall.
Yes, they do. And you're talking to someone who used to put 16 packs of sugar in their coffee, right? I don't do that anymore though. So, and I had to just stop drinking coffee because I couldn't stop with the sugar. So I just don't drink coffee anymore. I drink tea because I can drink it without any sugar. So sacrifices we make, see?
Mhm.
So what do you consider the major causes of mental health issues in reference to people who are in hospitals and facilities?
Oh, this is a whole episode right here. One term that I have not used is mental illness. And where you draw the line between just mental health challenges and severe mental illness or serious mental illness, I don't know. It depends on who you ask. But there's a point that people get to sometimes where they just can't function in the world. And the only solution is to go into a mental hospital, get that intense treatment
Mhm.
from therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and all that stuff. But what causes it? No one really knows. My answer is life causes it. Some of it might be genetic. Some of it might be your environment that you're in. If you are in a toxic environment or a toxic relationship, that can affect your mental health. One thing that I have done recently is really been intentional about removing some friends from my life that needed to go.
Okay.
My new thing is I'm going to still love them just from far away, because I realized that the energy they were bringing to me was just not working for my mental health. So it's really important to, again, look at everything. So when it comes to the serious mental illness that you're talking about and what causes it, I'm not really sure. And I think even professionals out there disagree on exactly what causes it. But the cool thing is now more than ever, we have great treatment out there for people who are struggling.
So you mentioned removing friends who um
Gotta
that
go.
that are that's contributing to issues in life or causing them for you. So how do you go about that? So I get that question a lot. People will say, well, got these friends, they're like vampires, they drain my energy and I don't know what to do. And my question is, I'm straight no chaser. It's like, why do you take the phone call? That's my question. So
Why do you take the phone call?
yeah.
I did an exercise, and I'm going to challenge all of you out there who are struggling with toxic relationships to try this exercise. I was on a plane and I took out a little spreadsheet and created 3 lists: the A list, the B list, and the C list. The A list were the essential people in my life that I just cannot live without. I love them to death. The B list is just great people I know, great people I chat with. Maybe we're not really close friends, colleagues. And the C list is the people that just got to go. Now, what was really interesting, I actually started crying because when I thought through the list, I didn't even realize that certain people that I thought would have been on the B list should have been on the A list. Certain people on the A list should have been on the C list. But I really got to organize in my head and see who is toxic and who is healthy. But when you start trying to address the toxic and put up boundaries, it's important to have a strategy in place. For example, learning to say no to things is really important. We do that every day in my company, and I just want to give a huge shout out to my team member, publicist Amira, who put all this together. She has actually taught me a lot about that, and thank you, Amira, for that. In that. You don't have to say yes to everything in this world. And I've learned that there's a book out there called The Power of a Positive No. It's written by a hostage negotiator, actually. And the book teaches you that we don't say no because we feel that it will damage the relationship. So if you and I are friends, and you say, Mike, you want to hang out, and I say no, I might feel that that's going to damage it, and we say yes and end up regretting taking that phone call or whatever. The key is to learn to craft a no, and the way I do that is by acknowledging the person in one sentence. Thank you so much for wanting to hang out with me. Politely saying no, unfortunately, I'm going to be really busy for the next few weeks. And then at the end, offering an alternative. You know what? Let's chat in the next few months when I'm around and we'll see if we can get coffee again. And the amount of good replies I get to me saying no is incredible. So there are ways to go about it. Another great book that you should all check out is Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and John Townsend. Really goes into setting up boundaries with people in your life. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you're mean. It means you're just respecting yourself and actually wanting to put your love into the right places.
Okay, and that was The Power of a Positive
Positive.
No.
No.
Writing these down.
I like to read.
I do too. And then Boundaries by Dr.
Yes.
Henry Cloud and John Thompson. Okay, guys. So I recommend that you get those books because we do say yes when we really want to say no. And when we know we should say no, we often say yes. And you're right, we end up regretting it. And I have found that in the work I do, is every time you say yes, you're actually saying no to yourself. So you need to be careful about what you say yes to because you only have so much time. And when you say yes, you're saying no to all of the great things that you were created to accomplish or things that you want to do. So be really careful with that. And it's
Well,
okay, they'll survive.
yeah, and can I add to that, just
If you
going
can.
circling back to how we started this whole conversation? One thing you can start saying no to is this. I
Yeah.
actually decided that I'm going to get one of those parental control apps for kids, even though I don't
Hmm.
have kids. I'm going to get it for me. So I can, number one, get a clear, accurate reading of how much time I'm spending on the mobile device and start going on a little diet. Like I'm not allowed to go to certain websites during the day, like news sites or whatever, right? That is toxic sometimes. So it's again important to set up boundaries in your life. And for a lot of us, especially people of color, we're just not taught this.
That's true. And people do grab their phone first thing. But I don't mind usually a request to do things. It's like, no, I don't like that phone. We do have a question that's come in. It says, how do you approach a person who has challenges and expresses a desire to conceive a child? We might need a little bit more information
Yeah,
because that one's
a little vague.
broad. Okay, so for that question, because you guys could give us a little bit more information, um, and we will try to get that answered. And if not, we'll follow up later with a response to that.
Well, can
So, and
I?
are you talking about mental health challenges and you want to have a child? So, you know, you got to help a sister out. That one, okay. Just got to help a sister out, okay. Um, so when people decide to seek professional help, or they know they need to seek professional help, one of the issues are the cost. And a lot of insurance plans only give you like, and I usually joke about this and I don't mean any harm. It's like you've got this big issue, like in my case with my son was murdered. It's like, and you get 16 visits. It's like, is that all y'all gonna pay for? Oh, we need more than that. Um, so how do you what can you do to reduce the cost? Are there any things people can do to work with their employer to get time off? Because these aren't things that generally the employer will discuss. They'll just say, go to the employee assistance program, and people don't even know what questions to ask. A lot of times you don't even know where to find those people. So how can people, how can they work with their employer to make this an easier process?
Okay, you asked quite a few questions. Let me get to the first one about therapy, just in and of itself, because a lot of times people go to therapy and they don't have insurance or an employer sponsored program. Therapists, are at so many different price ranges, and there's a website called goodtherapy.org that is a directory. Um, and there's my friend Ashley, Therapy in Color. If you want a therapist of color, that's her website. You can find one that looks like us, if that's what's more comfortable for you. But one thing that you can do with therapists is you can tell them your financial situation, and a lot of them will be very flexible if you're honest with them and say, okay, you can only pay this amount, that's okay. And I think that's important to remember, that you're not just like stuck with a price that you're given. And with that, when it comes to the workplace, I mean, this is such a powerful topic right now, especially with the whole remote thing. When you're struggling with like a really difficult mental health challenge, let's say your depression is bad, you need some time off. You can request family and medical leave, FMLA, and you can talk to human resources about it. You don't need to say why you're requesting it, but you can just inquire about that and they can educate you on that. The other thing is, if you do feel comfortable sharing with your employer that you are struggling with a mental health challenge, by simply admitting that, by the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, they are required to give you what they call an accommodation, meaning some kind of flexibility that you need to perform your job. And if they don't do that or fire you, you can seek some legal uh, um, consequences. In the process, I do encourage you to talk to a lawyer about it, because The fine lines in the law are very, very specific and sometimes differ in certain states, depending on the state that you're in. But it's really important to know that generally nowadays you can talk about it at work. And when you reveal it, you don't need to reveal everything. So this is very important. When you're saying to your employer that you're struggling, let's say you are struggling with a mental health challenge, you can simply say, I'm going through a difficult time at home. Everyone knows what that means at some level for them, and leave it just at that. So I think it's really important to share about it if you feel comfortable. And if you don't, maybe examine what's going on there that's inhibiting you from speaking about it to your employer.
Thank you. And also, people should know about the employer is that once you disclose it, they can't tell anybody unless they have expressed permission from you to tell people. So if you don't tell anybody, they won't tell anybody. So, and that's a good thing. So you don't have to worry about what your coworkers are going to think because they won't discuss it with your coworkers.
Yes.
So the question is back is if how do you approach a person who has mental health challenges and they express a desire to conceive a child?
Well, I'm going to take a guess here to try to put the whole picture together. That this is a person that you might be romantically involved with. Let's just hypothetically say that's the case. If you are in a relationship with someone, whether they want to conceive a child or not, and they're struggling with mental health challenges, I think it's important to bring that up to them again in some of the ways that we discussed very gently, and get the conversation going and get them to commit to treatment. That's the important thing, getting them to commit to treatment. Once you cross that barrier, you're in a much better zone. Uh, you and the person, if it's a family member, same thing. Just having that conversation saying, you know, look, I see some things going on here and I think you need help. What are your thoughts on that? Help me understand what you're going through. That's going to be the way to do it, through gentle conversation.
And as Mike said earlier, therapy is self-discovery. So if you need to go to therapy with him, you should go. Discover yourself. It's got to be really cool. So just do it.
I had therapy today, by the way.
So, and we are not talking about the liquid kind, as I know some of the people who like
Not the liquid kind.
Right. Or the retail kind either. Okay. A recent United States Census Bureau reveals that living alone has more impact on mental health for young adults than older adults. I was surprised to see that. So let's talk about that a little bit. So I'm trying to figure out, it seems like young people have it all together. They tell us we don't, so they have it all together. So what's going on with that?
Well, first of all, I think none of us have it all together. Like none of us, we all like to say that we do. And when it comes to mental health statistics, one thing I always remind people is that whatever the statistics are, you're only getting the number of people who struggle with blank from those who were willing to tell the truth. So keep that in mind. Loneliness is a really big issue, especially now in the pandemic. We need to actually interact as humans. I'm an introvert, by the way. I want to be like on the mountain by myself, sitting there with my water and my music. Like, that's what I think about. But reality is we all need people. And that causes depression or makes it worse when you don't have that kind of interaction. And I'm sorry, like Zoom is great and Facebook Live, but this is not the same as if we were in person. So I think for those of you out there that might be struggling with loneliness, it's important to be as proactive as you can about addressing it. Here are some things that you can actually do right now to address your loneliness during the pandemic. One is actually take out a pen and write cards to people, especially thank you cards. I actually was doing this years ago where I would do like 10 a week or something. And I'm like, who am I going to write like 10 cards to? And of course, by the time I was like halfway through, I didn't want to stop. And what was great about that is I'm taking my cards to the mailbox, getting to imagine the people that are receiving them, opening them. And I actually felt a little bit of a connection there. So that's something you can do. It's not the same as in-person socializing. The other thing I want to bring up, and this is actually very important because we're on Zoom calls and FaceTime. One-dimensional communication is you and I emailing each other or texting. Two-dimensional, we get on the phone. Three-dimensional is face-to-face. But what do we call this thing we're doing right now. I call it 2.5. One of the things that you can actually do when you're in a one-on-one conversation like we are right now to actually improve your connection with someone else is just take a moment, just a few seconds to actually look into the camera. So looking into the camera is right here, but you're right here, and
Right.
actually imagine looking into the person's eyes and seeing their humanity just for a moment. And as I'm looking at you, hopefully you can feel that for me. And the idea is you don't want to stare. That's weird. That's weird. Don't just stare into the camera. But what it does, it will actually improve your connection with another person. And as you interact with people, as we're starting to do face to face more, I'm going to challenge all of you to make eye contact with people whenever you can. It's one of the greatest tools that has helped my mental health.
Fantastic. We have another question in is, do we really know and understand how illegal drugs affect our behavior?
Do we really know and understand? I mean, I think we're always learning about it, you know. But I think any kind of I was just having this talk with a friend the other day who she was sharing about drug use, with me and my thoughts on it or whatever. One thing I reminded her is that, she was asking me if what she was doing was bad or whatever. And I told her, I don't know. I'm not going to judge you. I don't judge any of my friends. Like, I can't judge anybody. But, I said to her, it's important to examine why we're doing something. And so let's just say you are utilizing substances, illegal substances. I think it's important to ask yourself what's going on there. And no, it's not just because you like doing it. It's usually to mask something else. And at the root of it usually is emotional problems that you haven't addressed, not being able to sit with your uncomfortable feelings. So it's really important to remember that illegal substances or substance misuse can make mental health challenges worse. So it's really important to address those kinds of challenges if you have them.
And that is not just for illegal drugs, as Mike said, any misuse of any medication.
Destructive driving,
Right,
people just, on
right,
the road.
right. So we talked about some things we could do to stay connected for those of us who are Zooming a lot. But younger people tend to only have, classroom time or something. So what are some of the things that maybe parents could help them do at home to feel more connected? Because they really, now that I think about it, they don't have their friends at school. They don't have their that social life is down and gone. So how do you keep them engaged?
Well, is engaged what you really want, or is it just having a good home experience?
A
Sometimes we
good
think
home
about,
experience.
we use that term engaged, but I want to say something about that. The human brain is not meant to go and go. We need downtime sometimes. I think it's not often used constructively, you know, but it's important for parents to be role models to their kids. So if you want your child to start exercising and eating right, don't tell them, show them. You know, be the role model. If your child doesn't really have any friends, start showing them how you have friends. And maybe that might be really uncomfortable for you, but it's really important to do. I actually had to do a presentation years ago, probably the worst presentation of my life. Oh, Stephanie, I had to speak to the parents of bullies.
Oh gosh.
Not the parents of the kids who were the parents of the bullies. And I'm preparing for this presentation, and like the entire time I was just devastated. I'm like, this is not going to go good, because basically what I was learning was that when it comes to bullying, the main reason we bully is because of lack of social skills. Where do kids learn their social skills? So I had to have I had to have this talk with their parents, and, and it was so awkward. I mean, I did it, and it was the most lukewarm like clap at the end for me. But I really think it's important for all of us to work on our social skills, even now during the pandemic.
Yes, it is. It is. It's important. God, I'm just had a vision of that room. It's like, okay, so what? You're saying, oh Lord, why me? So one of my next question is, of course, does mental health play more of a factor with women or men? Who's affected more?
I do not know. I think it's everyone. I really do. Everyone struggles with something. There's one thing that all of us right now have in common. Those of you that are watching, those of you that are listening, we all have something on our mind that we have never shared with anyone. And a lot of times that thing that we've never shared is holding us hostage. And the idea with treatment, talking about it, self care, is that eventually you can start to take your power back. And so realize that these are things that we all struggle with just in different ways and different forms and different intensity levels at different parts of our lives.
That's that's pretty cool. Yes. So for those of you listening, start to take your power back. Okay.
Power back.
Take your power back. But I would caution you not to tell the people on your B or C friends list.
Yeah, don't tell them that.
Don't tell them that, right? And this is assuming that you're doing the friends list right now, because
Yes.
I need to do that at the beginning of every year. So one of the questions is, how likely is a child who comes from a broken home where they have witnessed a family divorce likely to grow up with separation anxiety or other forms of mental illness? How likely are they to be affected by that?
Very likely. And at the same time, there's hope, because if you get the child in treatment with the right support system, that will significantly increase their chance of a healthy adulthood. And I've been very fortunate. One of the things I'm really missing, I'm going to get all emotional talking about this, is I go to Columbia, Missouri, and I go there prior to the pandemic and post pandemic. I'll speak it into existence post pandemic. I would go to Columbia, Missouri, and I would get to work with youth of color in an after school program. And many of them had experienced lots of things in the home, let's just say. And working with them with conversation, art, music, you could just see them start to blossom and start to share and just start to gain self-confidence. So there are ways of treating youth who've been through difficult stuff. And when we talk about trauma, which we really haven't really addressed enough here, I think, but trauma, a lot of times we think Civil War, the worst of the worst, but your trauma is your trauma. You and I could have been in kindergarten together. You were looking at me the wrong way, and I just internalize that and mess me up for life. That's my trauma. We can't measure it. Someone's worse than the other, but there are many things that we can do to address the trauma we've experienced. Great book out there called The Body Keeps the Score. It's like the Bible of trauma in the mental health world. It talks about how we store trauma in our body. So whenever that traumatic trigger comes up and you feel that feeling in your chest, guess what? It's actually in your chest. And learning to deal with emotions from the level of the physical body is another great way of working through your trauma.
Yes, that's true. The body does keep score, and your body is talking to you. So if you've got pain anywhere or discomfort anywhere, that is some trauma lodged into your body. So I teach that all the time. So people say, "Oh, everything's all right." You say, "All right." Well, what does your body say? And then they say, "It's not in my body. It's in your body." Those are
Mhm.
perfect. Those are perfect books. Let's go back to your book. So, and we want to talk a little bit about drumming, because we got about 5 minutes left. You mentioned you were a drummer. Are you still drumming? And
You
so,
know,
book on how you even got the drum. I thought that was so cool. You
you
finally
know, I,
got the drum.
drumming was the thing that actually turned me around as a youth. Go back to, we were just talking about youth who've been through
Uh-huh.
trauma and art. For some reason, I mean, I'll never forget the feeling of drumsticks in my hands. That feeling worked better than any medication they gave me. The feeling of the drums. I feel so connected when I sit down behind my drums. So I spent most of my adult life as a working drummer in New York City, and I loved it actually. I missed it. I told my parents when they they were like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I'm like, "I just want to be a bar drummer and play for drunk people in the bar." And like that's actually kind of still what I want to do with my life. I love being a bar musician. That's my favorite thing to do in the world. But nowadays, I actually keep my drums at home and I'm still practicing, and I actually still take lessons. And one of the reasons I've been doing that is leaving that option open. If I ever wanted to jump back into that career, give up all this and just go back to being a musician, I could. But I like funk. I like funk. I love groove. I love George Clinton, Parliament
Oh
Funkadelic,
yeah.
James
Oh
Brown,
yeah.
and that's the stuff I listen to all the time. I even got a new Bose stereo system to listen to my music even better. So I like my stuff with a backbeat.
I do too. Tell you, we got to hang out. I love it. So what are some of the other key takeaways from your book, so that we can encourage people to rush out and get the book? I really do. It's a wonderful book, you guys. You have got to read it. I think it's fantastic.
Well, the biggest takeaway that I hope people get is that when we talk about stigma surrounding mental health, we talk about it as if it's something out there in the world, like the smoke that exists in the air. Stigma's within us. It's our own shame that we carry around and project onto the world. And once you can take ownership of that, you can just change your life. You can start talking about your mental health the moment you stop listening to this or watching this. No one's stopping you from that. And that was a very empowering thing for me to learn. But there are things that you can do to practice self-care better. There are ways to go about the conversation. In the book, I give lots of details on how to have conversations. And I think it's important to just have these tools so we can show up in the world and be the best version of ourselves that we can be.
That's wonderful. So be sure that you guys get a copy of Mike's book, Transforming Stigma: How to Become a Mental Wellness Superhero, because it'll help you in every area of your life and may even help you with that conversation when your friends are having some trouble. This is the end. We're out of time. I want to thank you for joining me. Mike and I'll have to get back for a part 2 because I still have questions, and I don't like to leave them unanswered. And I know that the people watching it will have a lot of questions too. As I remind my viewers, do not go gently into that good night. I want you to find a heel worth dying for and take it. Be the person that you've been waiting for and make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous. Above all else, do it your way, and may this day offer you just what you need in each unfolding moment. Be inspired, and to further notice, celebrate everything. Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and remember, life is too short to drink cheap champagne. Guys, have a great evening. Bye now.
too short to drink cheap champagne. So I decided to buy me a better brand to taste with my